hear for Greg.
Let me know when you're ready for video.
Okay. Do I need this hand?
No, you don't need that.
I'm ready. I want to especially thank Paul for all he's done. I know that everybody in here knows him, but when I met him, I was like, this guy's not for real. He's not that good, he's not that nice, but he loves everybody. You know, and I haven't heard too many people say anything bad about you, Paul, so keep it going. You're doing good. But when he asked me to come talk, you know, I've done 2 times now. I've done it, I think I've done it twice, haven't I? Maybe. But I didn't want to repeat the same old stuff that you might have heard last time. How many's here for the first time? Okay. I mean, how many people have heard me speak before? Oh, that's good. This is all new stuff. No, I want to just say thank you for, if you are, being a fan of baseball. Because it helped me earn a living for many years. And I'm going to tell you some things about baseball that you've never heard before, because it was my experience, and I'm here to share that because I think baseball will become more alive to you if you can follow me through here. I shouldn't be long because I've got 2 friends here that I think I have an appointment to go to. But we'll get him on the stage right now because I'm so glad that you're here. When baseball's played, there's hits and errors. And there's a man in the press box that's making my living or not. Because there's a lot of marginal calls, or close to being calls, of what's a hit and an error in baseball. So I was thinking today, if my friend shows up, I'm going to have him come and explain it. Because he's a special man, and I'm very proud of him for doing what he does, because it's not easy. So I'm going to open it up right now to anybody in here. Do you have a real quick definition of what a hit or an error is in baseball? If you were the official score, what would you have to decide in your head whether it was a hit or an error? Anybody have anything they want to share about? Do you ever watch baseball games and say, that was an error, well, that was a hit? Well, I'm going to have Professor Utzler come on, Max. He's official score for the Kansas City Royals. Professor Max Utzler, come on. He's been a professor, so he might talk for a long time.
It's on.
You may not get the mic. I'm used to doing an hour and 15-minute classes. So what specifically would you like me to address?
How did you get hired as the scorekeeper for the Kansas City Royals?
Well,
you never played pro ball.
No. I've been around baseball all my life. Mike Swanson, I'm sure most of you have heard of Swanee. He was the media relations director for the Royals. And once I went from a 12-month contract to a 9-month contract, my summers were free. I talked to Swanee about doing some more stuff, maybe helping out with TV broadcasts, because TV is where my experience was. And and he had me do a few things here and there. And then after a couple of years, when the MLB.com started, I started writing for them. And I played ball, obviously in high school, American Legion ball, Galesburg, Illinois. We had a great program. Jim Sundberg was one of my teammates back in those days. And then played at Division III school, Knox College. And then I went to get my master's at Mizzou so I could become a college baseball coach. So I got my master's, and 2 years after that, I spent 4 years as assistant coach with Mizzou. And then had to kind of decide what direction to go. And that was when I went to be more of a teacher, but I stayed active. I played on a semi-pro team. I got more baseball experience than you. I played on the Columbia Stakes, sponsored by the State Brewery, so we were well taken care of. And then when I was 40, left them and left Columbia, took a job in St. Louis, and I'll never play baseball again. And then when I moved here 2 years later, they started men's senior baseball. Do we have anybody in this group who plays men's senior baseball in Kansas City?
Would you like to? No, I'm just kidding.
No, talk to me afterwards and I'll get you connected. We started with an over 30 league, and this was, gosh, back in 1987. I member number 12 on that. And now I play in the over 65 league, and I'm way over that age limit there. And then we have a good place to get started, the 70 backyard league. So, I mean, I certainly played more games this year than you did.
Okay,
So.
get to the hits and errors.
I was trying, because
My time's running out.
he was questioning my credentials and why I became an official scout. I know more about baseball than you do.
That's why you're up here. That's why you're up here.
One of the myths of official scoring is that if a fielder gets a glove on the ball, it's automatically an error. I can't tell you how many people I've sat with at a game. Oh, that should be an error. Had one recently. Were you watching TV the night that Bobby Witt Jr. hit the inside the park home run? Oh, here's what happened. The ball goes into the right center field gap, and the right fielder, who was left-handed, comes running over, and the ball just creases off the tip of his glove, and it rolls to the wall. And Bobby, that night, he ran the 4th fastest inside the park home run in Major League history. So he takes off around there, and so I did want to make one more check. I mean, I was sure that it was going to be a hit, but I have a stat screen right next to me. Ball was hit 107 miles an hour. I used to say, I should be hit, that ball was hit really hard. Now I can prove it. I know exactly how hard it was hit. And then also, as I looked at the replay on it, it was dusk, and you know how bad that can be seeing at Kauffman Stadium, and that looked to me like the right fielder lost in lights a little bit. So I scored an inside the park home run. And at the next half inning, here comes the PR guy from the Seattle Mariners. He goes, I'd like you to take another look at that. I said, why is that? He goes, I think it should be an error. And so I took another look at it, and then called him back and said, okay, how hard it was hit, lost it in the lights, and that's a hit all the way from me. And he does have a way he can appeal that. So, I thought we were done. Then he comes back the next half inning. I just got called from the dugout. Could you take another look at it? We think Julio, great center fielder, Julio Rodriguez, ought to get an error. And he did bobble the ball a little bit out there. So I looked at this replay at high home so I could see where Julio was. Bobby is 30 feet rounding second base, never broke stride. That's one of the things to look for. He was there thinking, okay. And at that point, Julio juggles the ball, picking it up. And I said, Bobby would have scored on a 250-foot ground ball single. The ball's laying on the warning track, to which the Mariners guy said, yeah, but Julio's got a hell of an arm. I said, so he's going to throw out Bobby Witt from 385 feet. Well, anyway, that's the life of an official scorer.
Thank you. Round of applause. Every night, you're just like an umpire, huh, Max?
That's it. And that's why they don't put our names on the scoreboard.
Is this on? Yeah. Okay. I want to go through a list of what we have in common, so you, hopefully you'll like me a little bit more before I get into my baseball stories. We all wore uniform. Everybody, raise your hand if you wore a uniform in your life. Your uniform. Yeah, me too. I started wearing it when I was in Little League in Akron, Ohio, when I was 7, and I wore it for 30 straight years. We all were in a group when we wore a uniform. We had a superior officer, or in my case, a manager. We had a time schedule. Be on time. You never were late in the military, were you? Were you ever late? I don't think so. We had teammates that supported us. Sometimes we had ones that we could go talk to about things that were bothering us. Too bad I never talked to George Brett about hitting, because he never gave me one tip. We were watched and we were counted on to perform. Yes, we were, every day. You represented your branch, whatever you were, in the way that you were supposed to. We stood for the national anthem, and I stood at third base in front of 40,000 people because they used to play the national anthem when we took the field. So I'm standing out there at third base, and after I stopped listening to the guy on the first row say, "I paid to see George Brett. I didn't pay to see Greg Pryor. I paid to see George. Where's George?" I didn't do anything. I just got ready for the first pitch. But the hot air balloons were coming over, and it was hardly any breeze that night, and the national anthem was playing, and I'm telling you, I've had some great experiences of playing baseball, but that night was one of the most peaceful feelings I had to be in a country like this, where I got to go play in a game like that, in front of people like those, and to sit there and wait for the game to start, thinking that the ball was going to hit me the first pitch. There's nothing like it. I mean, I wish you all could have been there. I'm trying to share with you how exciting it was to be out there getting ready for that ball to come at me at third base. And then we got some respect for our service. You know, I got my respect is on my baseball cards. Kids still send them to me. I got some tonight. If you want some, I'll give them to you after I'm done talking. You can come pick one up if you want. You must have a young one somewhere that wants one of my baseball cards. Even if you don't, I don't care. You know, they still send them. But that's some of the things we had in common. So when Paul asked me to come, it was like, no problem. I'll come. But I'm going to get into areas, 4 areas real quick, and then we'll be gone. I'm going to talk about some fun. I'm going to talk about fear. I'm going to talk about failure. And I'm going to talk about forgiveness. And I'm going to tie it into baseball, and maybe you can relate to it in whatever you've done so far in your life. But I have a friend that has been to these meetings, David Nasser. David comes to these, Paul, right? Yeah. Well, David, I'm not promoting his book, but I am, because I found something in here that's so funny for me, and I hope it is for you. He wrote a book that says, "You just have to laugh." And all I do tonight is create laughter, and every one of you, I've succeeded in whatever I'm trying to do, okay? But here's one of the stories in his book that I was reading. This happened to read it, and like authors, a great author that I'm not, people found mistakes in my book, and they would tell me, my 10th printing, they would say, "Pryor, you got a mistake on page 123. Well, on page 115 of his book, he's talking a story about Bill Veeck. Bill Veeck was a famous baseball owner of many teams, and he gave me a chance to play in the big leagues, basically. I'll tell you that in a minute. But there's a story in here about Bill Veeck. I was going to read it to you. But as I was reading it myself, he misspelled Veeck. Veeck is V-E-E-C-K, and David, he didn't pay the right proofreader, spelled it V-E-C-K. So I texted him. I said, "Dave," I was kind of like, don't bring it up, Pryor. He might get embarrassed. He might not like you. But I told him, and I was reading it today, and I'm thinking I want to share it with you because it's kind of a cute story. And it goes like this. One summer night, while World War II was raging overseas, Bill stood on top of the Wisconsin hotel. Bill Veeck. Merv Connors, first baseman for Veeck's hapless Chicago Cubs, was drunk on the ledge and threatening to jump. Cautiously, Veeck asked, "Merv, have I ever been unfair with you?" "There was only one thing I got to say for you, Bill," Connors said, staring at the pavement. You treated me well." "Then I'm entitled to ask you for a small favor," Veeck asked gently. Merv glared, certain Veeck would try to talk him out of jumping. Veeck continued, anticipating Merv's suspicions. "Merv, I'd be the last guy to stop you from doing what you want, but could you wait until I call the newspaper so they can get a picture of you hitting the sidewalk? You'd make every front page in the country. And you'd have to admit, Merv, the team could use some publicity. Maybe you could change into your uniform first." That one got me. I was like, "Bill Veeck, I love you." Connors laughed. Then, without a word, he climbed off the ledge, got in bed, fully clothed, and passed out. They never spoke of the incident again. Oh, I have way too much raunchy because I love telling people about baseball in a different way than they've heard before. And I love telling you my personal experiences because you've gone through them in your life. Many of you have not suffered, but you've had fear, you've had failure, you've had things that didn't go well. So the first thing I want to talk about is kind of like the two things on fear for me. My first fearful moment that I remember in my life was not fighting with my brother. It was going out in the Ohio River in a rowboat in the fog with my grandpa, who had the boat in the mud. We went out catfish hunting on a Saturday morning, and it was fog everywhere. We couldn't see anything. I was just a small kid. I'm thinking, where are we going? I'm so scared. I was so fearful because I was thinking, if I fall out, nobody could ever find me, you know? I was thinking that because I couldn't tell. I said, Grandpa, how do you know where we're at? Well, guess what? Little did I know that this wasn't Grandpa's first fishing trip. We caught a mess of catfish. We pulled it into the boat. We walked up the bank, over the railroad track, up the bank toward his house. And in the back of his house, he had this big old wooden platform with a bunch of knives sitting there. We threw them fish up there. He sliced their heads off. He filleted them right there. We walked them in the kitchen, floured them, cooked them, and ate them in probably within the hour. It was so cool that I remember that to this day of my memory of my grandpa. But I'm going to put up some slides now. And are we ready to go with the slides?
Sure. You want to hold on the video? Or?
Well, I was gonna wait because
Okay.
they're paying attention. No, let's not interrupt them.
Let's go forward. Go forward.
They see the first one that nods, I'm quitting talking. Whatever one I see, if it nods, I'm leaving. Now this is, I want to show you my grandpa.
Excellent. Oh, the other one.
The other way?
One more.
There we go.
There we go.
Here's my grandpa right here. His name's Homer. Get it? Homer Pryor. And he played in 1912 for a team in Ohio called Duffy. Duffy, Ohio. You ever been there? Probably not. Well, that was 37 years before I was born. I was born in 49. And unfortunately, I don't have one story about my grandpa that I can tell you that what he did to play for Duffy. And there's like 4 sets of brothers there. They all played together in a small town in Ohio. And I've been toying with the idea of taking a baseball show to baseball fans about the history of baseball that they've never heard before and they would love to see. Memorabilia, interviews, things like that. So stay close. We're getting ready to talk about it because I think people really would love a great baseball history show. So anyway, my dad was George, and I'm going to go backwards now because without my dad, or without my grandpa having my dad, George H. Pryor, I wouldn't be here tonight because my dad was the inspiration for me to pursue a professional career, not because I thought it was good enough, but because he introduced me to it. And like Paul said, how many people got in the service because of relatives or friends giving you an introduction to it? So I got into baseball because my dad was introduced to it by a Homer, and my dad got me involved. And I ended up getting ready to go to college in 1967. I had no scholarship offers, and I wasn't drafted by the pros. And Vietnam was going on. Everybody knows about 67 in this country. It wasn't. It was a very interesting place. People were rallying against the war. People were rallying for it. And I'm looking and said, well, Dad, what am I going to do out of high school? He goes, you're going to go to Florida Southern College. I said, wow, I don't have a scholarship. They don't want me. He goes, well, I'll see about that. Well, luckily for me, I had an older brother that was the best pitcher in the history of Florida Southern College. He was 8-0 as a freshman. And my dad went to the coach who had given him a 4-year scholarship. He says, I want you to give little Greg a scholarship, or Big Jeff's going to another school, and I'm going to put him in the same school. So my dad comes back to Orlando from Lakeland, and he goes, guess what? You're getting a scholarship. And I'm thinking, wow, they want me. I played 4 years at Florida Southern College, two-time All-American, Division II, and thinking that they wanted me. It wasn't until after I got out and got into the pros that the coach told me that my dad bribed him to take me. So let's hear it from my dad, who was a fullback for Wake Forest. I don't know why they didn't put a W on top of his helmet. But that's the gold. Remember, Wake Forest colors are gold. My dad was a fullback, and he ran with no face masks and no helmet. And he was still good looking later on in his life. I don't know how he did it, you know. How do you block this guy's coming at you? But he had 6 children with my mom, who was, both of them were in the Glee Club in Sistersville, West Virginia together. And he ruled with an iron fist in some certain ways, enough to straighten me out when I needed it. He believed in corporal punishment, let me tell you. He was strong, he was so strong. But he didn't know anything about baseball. Never taught me how to throw, never taught me how to hit, never took teach me. He just got me in the game, and that's how I learned it. It wasn't until I got in the big leagues, my dad's calling me up, Greg, why are you taking the first pitch for? You know, you need to start swinging at the first pitch. I'm thinking, Dad, I got here this way, I can't really, you know, I was nice to him, but he was trying to tell me how to hit when I got the big leagues, which some people do. So be careful of who you take advice from. But I'm going to set up this real quick video. It's a 5-minute video on it, and then I'll end up with a few more stories if you want to sit around and listen. This video is it wasn't done professionally. It's kind of grainy, but I love it every time I watch it because you're going to see one of my biggest thrills in baseball right in a second here. I want to set this up for you. I was with the Chicago White Sox. I hadn't played in 3 or 4 days, and we played the Oakland A's in Comiskey. It was a doubleheader. We beat them the first game. We were playing the second game. I hadn't played, so I'm going on 4 days without playing. And the 9th inning, we get a man on first base with 2 outs, and Tony LaBrusa at the end of the dugout goes right by the guy that he told was going to hit earlier, Bruce Kim from Iowa, right? Bruce Kim. He passed him up. He goes, Pryor, you're hitting. I'm thinking, who, me? And I had no bats down there. I didn't have any batting gloves down there. I was not ready to hit. I hadn't stretched in like 2 hours, right? Well, this is me coming up the home plate. And now let's let the video explain to you what's going to happen here, and we'll talk to you when the video's over. Can we dim the lights? Just kidding. No, just kidding. No.